So today I'll discuss about the topic. In fact, the topic that is given in your syllabus is synchro, which is nothing but an error detector. So we classify error detector into three types: synchro, differential transformer, and potentiometer. So since your syllabus accompanies only synchros, so we'll not be talking about differential transformers and potentiometers. We call error detector as a feedback control system. So the feedback control system, when it operates from the error signal, which is generated by the comparison of the reference and the output. So shown over here is the comparator. So we till now saw this comparator to be a part of the control system where the reference signal, which is shown by A here, was fed with a positive sign, while the signal which was taken from the output, the actual output that exists in the system, was taken in the form of B shown over here with the negative sign. So what we were trying to do with the comparator was we were trying to generate an error by subtracting B from A. And I told you that if in case actual output will be exactly equal to the reference or the desired output. So this is the desired output, and what you're getting from this the output side is B. So if there exists no difference between these two values or variables, then in that case error will be 0. So we were using this error to operate the controller. So if error comes to be finite, it will be operating the controller. In case error is 0, then the controller will not be operated, or it will not be giving any signal to the processor plant. So we define error as A. So this A minus B, the difference between the two variables, and what actually is being used in place of this comparator are these three things. Like synchro, you can use synchro in place of comparator in a physical sense. So we were showing the schematics of the comparator or error detector by this, but in physical, in real, what you use in place of comparator is any of these three things. So potentiometer is one of the famous and the most cheapest of all, and is widely used as an error detector. So I will not be discussing much about potentiometer, but I have given an example just to explain how error is being operated, error is being used in order to operate the system. So I'll start with this example. Suppose that you're given a potentiometer. So shown over here is a potentiometer which comprises of two arms along with a voltage supply given to it. So we are going to use this part as an error detector. So suppose that you gave a reference input, you took reference input from this particular point, and the actual output is taken from this particular point, and let's say these are very much symmetrical initially. So if we talk about the potential gradient that exists between the 2 points, so since you are providing a resistance between the 2 points, the gradient that will exist, and let's say the length of this reference resistance, the length is L. So the gradient that would exist, the voltage gradient that would exist across the resistor will be the voltage supply divided by the length of the resistor. A similar gradient will exist on the secondary side since both the resistance are identical. And if you talk about the voltage that exists between this point and this point, so we're talking about the arm at the reference input side and this point. So the voltage that would exist between these 2 points will depend upon the length or the distance of this particular arm from this point. So let's say small, it is represented by small n. So this gap, the arm distance from this particular point is small n. So the voltage that would exist between this point and the arm will be the voltage gradient multiplied by small l. So this is the voltage that the reference input would be having with respect to this particular point. Similarly, if the arm at the actual output side is at the exact same distance from this point, then the voltage that would exist at the actual output is same given by this expression, that is gradient multiplied by L. And in case if we talk about the potential that exists between this point and this point. Let's say we connected a voltmeter or multimeter in order to measure the potential that exists between these 2 points. So we have a multimeter, we connect it between these 2 points. So now if both the arms are at the exact same location, that is distance L from this particular point. So this arm is at a distance small l from this point, and this arm is also at a small L distance from this point. Then in that case, the voltmeter will be showing 0. So you will be having a 0 potential difference between this point and this point. Now in case if suppose that the reference input is changed manually or by some means, you made this, so shown over here is theta r, and let's say theta or x, since shown over here is a linear resistor, not rotatory type of resistor, so it's not a rotatory part, rather a linear part, so there is a mistake, it should be xr, not theta. So suppose that this reference input arm is changed, is displaced by a certain displacement different from xr, so xr is varied. In that case, now there will exist a potential in the reference input compared to the actual output. So the voltmeter will be showing a reading, some finite voltages, because the reference input is changed. Let's say we shifted this arm below by a quantity, say XL. So now voltmeter will be showing a voltage reading corresponding to the displacement that took place in the reference arm. When the reference arm will be having, the reference input will be having a different voltage compared to the actual output arm. So there will exist a potential between these 2 points, which will be indicated by voltmeter. And this difference in voltages will be fed to an AC amplifier. So this difference is given by E. So when this difference in voltage is fed to AC amplifier, will be amplified to a voltage EC fed to a control winding. So now shown over here is the same servo motor that we discussed, the AC servo motor that discussed yesterday in the previous lecture. So now we are going to use this as an actuator in order to correct the error. So this is the feedback element, the feedback component, which is sensing the error, while this is the actuator which will be employed in order to command process, so in order to correct the error. So now this EC, the control voltage, is fed to this the control winding of the servo. As soon as the voltage exists in the control winding, so you're now talking about the existence of two voltages which are at 90 degrees phase difference, and whenever two voltages at 90-degree phase difference exist, will cause rotating magnetic field, and hence will allow the rotor to rotate further. Since this rotor is connected to the load through a shaft, this will allow the load to rotate, and further the load is connected to the actual output. So the load or the rotor will rotate in such a manner in order to bring the arm at the actual output side at the same location where you move the reference arm. So if you move this XL below, the whole process will cause the arm at the actual output side to move XL below. If you moved this arm at the reference side above by a quantity XL, in that case the process will work in such a manner that it will allow the arm at the actual output side to bring above by a quantity or displace it by a quantity XL. So this is how potentiometer is being used in order to correct the error that is being produced in the system. Now if we talk about synchros, so this is the main topic that is the part of our syllabus. Synchros are also used for detecting the errors. So they are used for controlling the angular position of the load from a remote place. So remote place, that means that you have a transmitter in synchros, a receiver. So transmitter is something you will be providing input at this particular point by some means, or let's say manually. So theta r is controlled manually, while you will be observing the rotation at the receiver side, which may be situated at a remote place. So which means that you can use this type of devices at distances. So the transmitter will be located at one place while the receiver will be situated somewhere at a far distance. So for this you again require some communication circuitry which will be allowing the two to communicate, and so you will understand it if you come to know the process how this works. And they are used for automatic control. So they are used for automatic correction of changes due to disturbance in the angular position of the load. So if any sort of changes occur in the angular position of the load side, so we'll discuss the upcoming slides about this. So just for sake of a glimpse of the synchro, so I'll explain you how this device works, but for the time being, just you can think of it as as accompanying a transmitter and a receiver. So the transmitter has, if you look, you can see that there are arms, 3 arms connected in a star fashion. So this is one winding connected to the second and to the third. So these 3 windings are connected in a star fashion and are the stator of the transmitter. So these 3 winding forms the stator, while this particular dumbbell shaped thing is the rotor. So this particular part is free to rotate and is provided with an AC single phase supply. Likewise, on the receiver side, you can see you have a stator accompanying the 3 windings connected in star fashion, and in fact the transmitter and receiver are connected to the stators of both. And then again you have a rotor on the receiver side, which is not now dumbbell shaped, rather a shape different from dumbbell. So why is this made? I'll tell you about this. And again, having a winding, a single phase winding. So this is how synchros are constructed. Now we talk about synchro transmitter. So we'll talk about this part. So if you look at the transmitter side, you'll see that there is an AC supply provided to the rotor of the transmitter, while stators are connected in star fashion. So when the rotor is excited by an AC current, a magnetic field is produced. So this is something that you all know, that if you give AC supply, an alternating supply to the rotor, then it will allow alternating current to flow through this winding, which in turn will allow alternating flux to produce. So you'll be having an alternating flux which will be produced in the rotor windings. The rotor magnetic field induces an EMF in the stator coils, 3-phase, connected in star by transformer action. So now, since there will be an alternating flux produced by the rotor windings, and this alternating flux will induce EMF in each of these 3 windings, and that will depend upon the angle at which this rotor is oriented from all the 3 windings. So shown in this figure is, if you look at this particular figure, you can see that the rotor is oriented at an angle 0 from the this winding. So this is stator winding, and this rotor winding has 0-degree orientation. But if you see that this rotor is now oriented by an angle theta from S2, the winding S2. So if you are going to change the orientation of rotor with respect to any of these 3 windings, then the EMF that will be induced in the windings will be different from the angle if you are going to take theta as 0. So this can be understood by the next slide. So I'll explain you this expressions and the transformer action that you studied previously. So the rotor magnetic field induces an EMF in the stator coils, 3 phases, connected in a star by transformer action. So this is something that you studied in transformer. So what you do in transformer is that you try to induce voltages at the secondary side. So you energize the primary windings and you induce voltages at the secondary side in transformers. So the same principle is being applied here, but the only difference with transformer is that you are now trying to orient the primary winding by certain angle theta. The input to the synchro transmitter is the angular position of its rotor shaft. In fact, the actual input through which you are trying to control everything is the shaft input. So it's theta, which is fed as the actual input, and you're trying to control everything. So AC supply is a supply or a source in order to operate the system, but the actual input is the shaft through which you're trying to rotate the rotor, or you're trying to change this theta. is the angular position of it. The input to the synchro transmitter is the angular position of its rotor shaft by measuring and identifying the set of voltages at the stator terminals. So now whenever you try to rotate by feeding the input theta and you vary this angle theta, so you have different set of voltages that appear across the terminals at the stator side. So S1, the voltage that occurs across terminals S2, S1 and S3 will change with the change in the orientation theta. So we'll try to now analyze this. Let's suppose that you have the two windings. Let's say this is the primary winding and this is the secondary winding. So consider this to be a transformer that we had known very well in past. So let's say this is the primary winding of transformer. This is the secondary winding. And the AC voltage that is being applied to the primary winding or rotor is, let's say, it's ER sine omega CT. So omega C is nothing but the angular frequency of the sinusoid that is fed as input, while ER is the maximum voltage of that sinusoid. And let's say the instantaneous value is given by small ER. So this is the voltage that is being fed to this primary winding. Now because of transformer action, the voltage that will be induced in the secondary winding will be how much? That depends upon the, let's say if this is having number of turns N1, this has number of turns N2, then you learn that voltage at secondary side V2 upon primary side voltage will be equal to N2 upon N1. So this is the relation that exists in case of transformer. Now you want to know that what voltage is being induced at the secondary side. So if this is voltage V2, then from this particular expression you see that V2 is nothing but V1 times N2 by N1. So this is the voltage that is being induced at the secondary side. So using this concept, using this expression, we say that when theta is equal to 0, so this is the we are talking about this theta, which means that the orientation between primary or the rotor winding and that of S2 is almost 0. So they are completely aligned. Shown over here is the completely aligned primary and secondary or rotor or S2. So in this case, if theta is 0, the voltage induced across the stator winding S2 and neutral is maximum, that is K, where K is nothing but N2 by N1 and ER sin omega t is V1 ER. So you have relation V2 which was V1 N2 by N1. So V1 is the same voltage that was fed to the primary, while N2 by N1 we call this as K. So N2 by N1 is taken as K here, and the voltage that exists at the secondary side is K times ER. So now if suppose that the rotor is rotated by an angle theta, so now suppose that we are going to orient this rotor by an angle theta, so the change in the voltage that is being induced at the secondary side will be given by Es2n KER cos omega t sin omega t. So we have an extra expression now, that is cos theta. So all the terms come from the previous relation. So KER sin omega ct come from this, while an extra expression of cos theta come additional to this expression, because now the rotor had been oriented by an angle theta. So this angle is theta, and this theta will cause the voltage to be induced at the secondary different from what it was actually existing previously. So this is the secondary side voltage which exists at the S2 terminal at this particular coil, because after orienting or after changing the orientation of primary side or the rotors. In the similar way, we can write the voltage that exists across S2n. N is neutral, so by N, the term N, here N means the neutral part, which is nothing but this arc shape state, the part of stator with arc shape. So S2n means the voltage that exists between this particular point and this point. S1n means the voltage that exists between this point and this point, while S3 is the S3n is the voltage that exists between this point and this point. So S2n, S3n is the voltage that exists between this particular terminal and this particular point or the arc. So which means that we are talking about this winding. So S3n is the voltage that exists across this winding. S1n is the voltage that exists across this winding. S2n exists across this winding. So S3n in a very similar fashion can be written as KE3 sin omega CT multiplied by cos theta minus 120 degree. So if you look at the angle between the rotor winding and that of S3 winding S3. So this angle is nothing but it's equal to theta minus 120 degree, or it could otherwise be written as theta plus 240 degree. So the angle between these two winding is 120, while which means S3 and S1 have angular displacement of 120, S1 and S2 has angular displacement of 120, and thus from this particular point to S2 you have 240 degrees, and to the axis of rotor will be plus theta. So this can also be written as theta plus 240 degree or theta minus 120 degree. So if you say this is 120, so this can be written as theta minus 120 degree sin omega c. Likewise, the voltage that exists between the terminals S1 and can be written as KER sin omega c cos theta minus 240 degree. So they have taken the angle. So I have taken this expression from a book, M. Gopal. So he has written this. He has taken all the angles and counterclockwise. That is why he's writing it as theta minus 240. If you want, you can write this as theta plus 120 degree. So you will come to the same expression, nothing different. So all are correct. So these are the voltages that exist across the three terminals with respect to neutral. Now, since we have, if you look at this figure, we are not using the neutral in any place. What we are doing is we are trying to feed all the output terminals S2, S3 and S1, and we are connecting these terminals to the stator of receiver side. So the voltage that we can access is not S2n or S1n or S3n. They are not accessible. So these voltages are not accessible because we cannot access neutral. It must be packed inside a machine like this. So you have a transmitter like this and a receiver like this. So you will always be having at the receiver or transmitter side you will be having terminals which are two terminals for AC input, while you will be having three terminals on the other side from the stator, which will be accessible. So neutral will not be accessible to you. So you will be having 5 terminals that will be accessible. 2 of these terminals will be provided with AC supply, while the 3 terminals will be the output will be taken from the 3 terminals. So that is why S2n and S3 and S1n are not useful. So we will try to transform each of these voltages into the voltage that exists across S2 S1, S2 S3 and S1 S3. So from these 3 expressions of voltages, we'll try to find the voltages that exist between terminals S1 S2, S2 S3, S3 and S1. So the terminal voltages that we can access are given by these values, and these are nothing but if you apply KVL on each of these loops. So since we are talking about S1 S2, that the voltage that exists between the terminals S1 S2, we are talking about the terminal S1 and S2, these two terminals. So the voltage that exists between these two terminals is nothing but can be obtained by applying KVL in this particular loop. So the voltage that exists between these two will be given by the voltage between S1n and S2n. So let's say if we assume this, since we have taken this as S1 S2, we assume this as minus, this as plus. Let's assume this as plus. So the current will take current in this fashion. So this will be taken as minus, this will be taken as plus, this will be taken as minus, this will be taken as plus. So if you apply KVL, you get this as Vs1 S2 minus Vs2n and minus Vn S1. Taking on right hand side, you will get S1n plus Vn S2, or this can be written as, you can write this as E minus E S2n. So they have the same meaning. So minus Es2n can be written as plus En_S2. So you can obtain these expressions using applying KVL on the respective loops. So if you see Vs1n, we obtain Es1n as this expression, while En_S2 it can be obtained from this expression. So you put a minus sign here, you get En_S2. En_S2 will be minus KER cos theta sin omega. Now if you solve these two expressions, you will come to the final expression root 3 KER sin theta plus 240 sin omega t. So this can be obtained by applying simple trigonometric relations that you have studied in class 12. So there is nothing special about solving these relations. So the final relation that you will be obtaining by solving will be these. So this is the voltage that will exist between the terminals S1, S2. Likewise, the voltage that exists between terminals S2, S3, this and this will be given by applying KVL, and further solving the relations, you will get this particular equation. Likewise, the voltage that exists between terminal S3, S1 will be this expression. So this is the voltage that exists at the terminals of the transmitter when you gave a single phase supply to the rotor and you brought or you made it have an angle theta from the winding S2. Alright. Now suppose that the rotor make an angle 90 degree with any of one of these stator coil. So if you look at this expression, if you talk about, let's say S3, S1. So if you have theta that it makes 90 degree from coil S2. So the axis of this rotor coil will be having a 90 degree from S2. In that case, if you're going to substitute theta equal to 90, this expression turns 0, which means that the voltage that will exist across S3 and S1, so S3, S1 will turn to 0 if this rotor makes an angle 90 degree from S2. So this can be understood from the basic expressions that you got over here. So you see that the primary and secondary windings, the voltage that is being induced at the secondary side will be maximum when the orientation is 0. If this primary is going to make an angle 90 degree with the axis of secondary, in that case no voltage will be induced at the secondary side. So that is why if you have theta oriented at 90 degree from any of these three coils, the corresponding voltage that will exist in the stator coil will be 0. Now if we talk about, I guess, okay, let's move on 5 minutes more. So if we talk about synchro receiver, the second part of the synchro cell sign or the synchro, so it's a combination of transmitter and receiver. Synchro receiver is also called a synchro control transformer. So the generated EMF of the synchro transmitter is applied as input to the stator coil of control transformer. So this is what I showed over here. So what we are doing is we first induce the voltages in the stator coils of the transmitter, and then we fed these voltages to the stator of the receiver. So when you try to do something like this, you're trying to feed the voltages from the transmitter to the receiver. So what happens is, okay, that there will be a flux that will be generated. So the voltage that exists across this coil will be fed to this coil. Likewise, other coils will be feeding voltages at the stator of receiver. Then when you energize the stator of receiver in the same fashion as was the transmitter side stator voltages, then in that case the flux that will exist in the receiver core or the air gap, you call the space here as air gap or core, the flux fashion will be very similar to the flux that was existing in the air gap of transmitter. So this is what is shown over here. So you have a flux pattern in this manner at the transmitter side. So if you're going to connect receiver with the transmitter stator, in that case the same flux pattern will exist at the receiver side. So you will always have the same flux. If you're going to orient or change this flux pattern, let's say you make this rotor shift by an angle theta. let's say I oriented or I change the orientation of this rotor by an angle theta. In that case, the flux pattern of the transmitter will be changed and will be having this orientation. So they will be looking something like this. So the flux pattern will change. In that case, since the receiver is connected to the transmitter, then the flux that will exist within the air gap of the receiver will also change in the same fashion, in the same manner. And likewise, if you are going to further rotate this rotor of transmitter, then the flux pattern that will exist at the receiver will change in the same manner. So we use this principle in order to generate error. Since the EMF that is being the generated EMF of the synchro transmitter is applied to the input of stator coils of control transformer, there will be a voltage induced in the control transformer, which means that this flux pattern which is being generated at the receiver side will induce voltage in the rotor of the receiver. So if this is the receiver rotor and there are windings provided on this rotor, the flux that exists across the air gap will induce voltages in this winding as well at the control transformer side. So this is given by expression, so you can obtain this expression using the same method that I told you for transmitter. So the same expression, the transformer action being taking place in the receiver side can be applied, and the induced voltage that exists in the rotor of the transformer will be obtained in such a manner. So let me make things once again more clear. What you did is, for the operation of a synchro, what you did was you applied an AC input, a single phase input to the rotor of the transmitter, which induced voltages in the stator windings of the transmitter. These induced voltages are further fed to the stator of receiver. So the same voltages exist at the windings of the receiver of windings of the stator of the receiver. And since the voltage exists at the windings at the receiver side of the stator, they will further produce flux in the air gap of the receiver. And this flux that is being produced because of stator of the receiver will be inducing voltages in the rotor of the receiver. So the windings that are provided at the rotor of receiver will be having induced voltages, and which are further processed. So I'll talk about this processing after discussing this slide. So synchro error detector, which is nothing but the combination of transmitter and receiver, is formed by interconnection of synchro transmitter and control transformer. So due to the similarity in magnetic construction, the flux pattern produced in the two synchros will be same. So this is the flux pattern that exists. So if you're going to change the orientation of one flux pattern, the other will change automatically. Initially, the shafts of the transmitter and control transformer are aligned. So they are aligned. For example, if the shaft of this rotor is along theta, along this axis, vertical axis, the shaft of the control transformer will also be along vertical axis, though it is shown with a difference of 90 degrees here, just to explain the expression given here. So in order to obtain this expression, they have shown this having different angles. So alpha shown over here is almost at 90 degrees from theta. So, but in fact, when you're going to initially use it, you're going to make alpha exactly equal to theta. So they will have same alignment. Note that when the rotor position of transmitter and receiver are in perfect alignment, so if suppose theta and alpha are same, voltage generated across the rotor terminals of the control transformer will be zero. This position is called null position of control transformer. So this is clear from this figure. If they are oriented in same direction, so if theta and alpha are equal, in that case, the flux that will be generated in the air gap of receiver will be in such a manner that it will not induce any EMF in the rotor of the receiver. So there will be zero voltage that is being induced if theta and alpha are equal. This is what this note mentions. So this particular position is called as null position of the control transformer. So shown here is the same circuit diagram schematic that I showed you before. This is the input. Now how are you going to employ the voltage that is being induced at the rotor of the receiver to correct its position? So suppose that the voltage that is being induced in the rotor side is further fed to a signal conditioning circuit. Signal conditioning means that you might be amplifying this signal. Since there a voltage exists between these two terminals, this may be amplified and further fed to a motor. The shaft of this motor may be connected to the rotor of control transformer. And as soon as the voltage, when you're going to change the orientation of the rotor of transmitter, if you're going to change this, you're going to feed a theta r, if you're going to change this value theta r, in that case the flux pattern will change, EMF will be induced, a finite EMF will exist between these two terminals, which will be amplified and fed to the motor. The motor will try to bring this rotor back to the same position to have the terminal voltage, induced voltage is 0. So this rotor will take the same position as the position of the rotor of transmitter. So if you're going to change the orientation of this particular rotor, the orientation of this rotor will change accordingly using this arrangement. So shown over here is an example how this can be employed for rotating a camera. So I think I'm out of time. I'll be discussing about this example tomorrow. If any one of you have any question, can ask me.